On December 7th, 1941, the USS Arizona exploded, killing 1,177 soldiers instantly. When the USS Oklahoma capsized, unusual hammering sounds emanated from inside its steel hull for days. The trapped soldiers were calling for help, but no one could rescue them. 82 years later, in 2023, Corporal Chen, while on night watch at Pearl Harbor, heard those hammering sounds again. They were coming from the basement of the Hickam building, and in this video, you will witness that night, because some soldiers are still waiting to come home. December 15th, 2023. Pearl Harbor Naval Base, Oahu Island, 9:30 p.m. Corporal Second Class David Chen was walking toward Hickam Air Force Base for his shift change, thinking about how deceptive Hawaii's paradise image could be. For tourists, Hawaii was crystal clear beaches, exotic cocktails, and pink sunsets. For military personnel, Hawaii meant rusty M16 rifles from the humidity, tropical diseases, 40-degree heat during night shifts, and an endless routine. But after 3 months stationed at Pearl Harbor, Chen had discovered a darker secret about Hawaii. This paradise island was built on soil soaked with the blood of thousands of soldiers. And that blood, I think it's still there. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. As Chen approached the Hickam building, he remembered the stories his grandfather had told him about Pearl Harbor. David, Grandfather Chen would say, that morning, 2,400 soldiers died in an hour and a half. Some were trapped inside the ships, and the sound of hammers could be heard for days. But no one could save them. December 7th, 1941, Sunday morning at 7:55 a.m., 353 Japanese planes attacked Pearl Harbor. 8 battleships were sunk, and 1,177 soldiers lost their lives on the USS Arizona in the attack. After the USS Oklahoma capsized, the sound of hammers coming from inside the hull for days was just one of the most terrifying details. The soldiers who were trapped alive were banging on the steel walls for help. The rescue operation took so long that the sounds gradually faded away. 82 years later, have those sounds really fallen silent? Or are they still there at Pearl Harbor? Chen stood in front of the 12th Air Force Headquarters building. The building was a 3-story gray concrete structure, but it looked ordinary from the outside. But Chen knew the history of this building. On December 7th, 1941, during the attack on Pearl Harbor, this building was used as a hospital. Wounded and dead soldiers were gathered here. The basement had been turned into a temporary morgue. At that time, thousands of bodies, blood, and the smell of death filled the air. After the war, the building was cleaned and renovated, but some things cannot be cleaned. Chen, said Isaac, who had come for the shift change. Are you ready for a quiet night? Isaac was a security expert. He had been working at Hickam for 6 months. Chen asked, will the alarms go off tonight? Isaac replied, they go off every night, David. Between 3 a.m. and 3:30 a.m., even though the building is empty. This building is not empty, David. Chen sat down at the security desk, at the main entrance of the building. Isaac handed over his duties and left. But before he left, he warned him, David, after 3 a.m., If the alarm goes off, just silence it. Don't check the building. Because what you'll find won't be a living person. After Isaac left, Chen checked the security cameras. There were cameras on every floor, every corridor, and every room in the building. 45 minutes into his shift, Chen noticed the first odd thing. One of the cameras on the third floor showed the fluorescent lights flickering at regular intervals. Chen checked the security system. There was no electrical issue, but the lights kept flickering. When he zoomed in on the camera, he saw that the door at the end of the corridor was slightly ajar. He thought it might be the wind. As Chen reviewed the security footage, he learned more about the building's history. During the Pearl Harbor attack, some of the wounded brought to this building were very young soldiers, around 18 years old. Those rescued from the USS Arizona had arrived here with burns and trauma. Many of them did not survive. The basement had been used as a morgue for 3 days during that period. The bodies had been kept there for identification. The most horrifying detail: some of the soldiers looked so young that it took days to find their families. After midnight, the atmosphere in the building changed. Chen tried to convince himself it was just psychological, but it wasn't. There was a real change. The air felt heavier. The echoes sounded different, and the smell, a strange smell, began to emerge. At first, Chen thought it was the smell of detergent coming from the corridor, but then he realized this was the smell of an old hospital, the smell of disinfectant and blood. Chen had taken medical courses during his military training, so he recognized the smell. At 1 a.m., Chen heard the first sound. It was the sound of footsteps on the third floor, moving at a steady pace. It sounded like someone was walking down the hallway. Chen checked the cameras on the third floor. There was nothing there, but the sound continued. He went to the second floor. The sound was coming from the second floor. He looked at the first floor. The sound was coming from the first floor. "This isn't possible," Chen said. "The sound can't be coming from 3 floors at the same time." But the sound was getting closer. Chen remembered the security protocol. If there was a security risk, he could call the K9 unit. He picked up the phone and called the K9 team. "Tim, this is Chen. There's unusual activity in the building. I may need K9 support." The person on the phone replied, "I'm not sending dogs into that building." "Why not?" he asked. "Because the trained security dogs refuse to enter that building. I tried to force Rex in last month. He froze at the door and backed away." Chen's blood ran cold. "Why won't the dogs go in?" "I don't know, but animals are more sensitive than we are. They sense things early." By 2 a.m., Chen realized it was difficult to sit at the security desk. The uneasiness was growing. He kept looking behind him, listening to the hallway, and the strangest part, the temperature. In tropical Hawaii, despite the air conditioning being off, the building was starting to cool down. Chen checked the thermometer. The outside temperature was 28 degrees, but inside it was 18 degrees. "Chen, this is impossible. The indoor temperature can't be lower than the outdoor temperature with the air conditioning off." However, the coldness wasn't just physical. Chen felt a bone-chilling coldness. It was as if something else had entered the building. Remembering Isaac's warning, Chen set the alarm to go off at 3 a.m. "There's a problem with the motion detector," he said. "It "It's just a technical issue." But he knew it wasn't a technical issue. He prepared the security cameras. He took position to respond immediately to the alarm, 2:59 a.m., 3 a.m. At that moment, alarms began to sound simultaneously on every floor of the building. But there was nothing on the cameras. When Chen looked more closely at the cameras, he noticed something. On the 3rd floor, at the end of the corridor, a faint shadow was moving. As the alarm bells rang wildly throughout the building, Chen rushed to the security panel. Red lights were flashing. The locations displayed on the screen: 3rd floor, 2nd floor, basement, and the strangest thing was that they were all going off at the same time. Chen said, "This is impossible. There can't be movement on all floors at the same time." According to protocol, he was supposed to check the building when the alarm went off. But Isaac's warning was still in his mind. "Just reset it. Don't check the building." Chen pressed the reset button on the alarm to silence it. A moment of silence fell, but this silence was even more terrifying, because now he truly felt he wasn't alone in the building. 5 minutes after the alarm stopped, Chen would never forget what he saw on the cameras. On the 3rd floor corridor camera, a human shadow was moving on the wall. But there was no one who could have cast that shadow. The shadow was walking along the wall, sometimes stopping, as if searching for something. Chen zoomed in on the camera. The shadow resembled the silhouette of a young soldier. He had a soldier's backpack on his shoulders and was holding something in his hand. "A letter?" Chen whispered. The shadow stopped at the end of the corridor. It turned its head and seemed to look directly at the camera. At that moment, Chen's blood ran cold. The shadow had no face, but he felt it was watching him. Chen decided to ignore protocol and check every corner of the building. He went up to the 2nd floor with his flashlight and walkie-talkie. The corridors, which seemed familiar during the day, felt like a maze at night. He knew the layout of the 2nd floor: offices, meeting rooms, file rooms. He knew where everything was. But now these rooms looked different. Light was seeping out from under the doors, but there was no electricity in the building. Chen approached the first door. He looked inside through the glass. The room was empty, but on one of the desks lay a military uniform from the 1940s. It was spotless, as if it had been ironed just moments ago. Chen tried to open the door, but it was locked. The key to the room was in Chen's pocket. He turned the key and opened the door. When he entered, the uniform was gone. Making the biggest mistake, Chen decided to go down to the basement. The basement had been used as a morgue in 1941. Now it was being used as a storage room. But Chen immediately felt the heaviness in the atmosphere. As he descended the stairs, the echo of his footsteps sounded strange. It was as if he wasn't the only one walking there. When he opened the basement door, the sight that greeted him shocked him. Storage boxes were neatly arranged in rows, but each box had a handwritten name tag on it: Johnson Robert, age 19, Williams Michael, age 18, Martinez Carlos, age 20. When Chen realized what these names meant, his stomach clenched. These were the names of soldiers who had died in 1941. While waiting in the basement, Chen heard their voices for the first time. Just whispers. At first he thought the sounds were the wind, but there couldn't be any wind in the basement. The sounds were coming from the walls, very faint, but clear. Help us. Can't find home. The ship still burning. Chen pressed his ear against the wall. The voices were clearer now. Tell them we're still here. Letters. Need to send. Letters. Chen's hair stood on end. These voices sounded like those of the young men who had died at Pearl Harbor. The most terrifying discovery came at that moment. As Chen stood in the basement, he heard a distant metallic sound. It was monotonous and rhythmic. Clang, clang, clang. Chen recognized the sound. It reminded him of the hammering his grandfather had described. In 1941, it was the sound of soldiers trapped inside the USS Arizona and USS Oklahoma, banging on the hull of the ship to signal for help. But now, 82 years later, those sounds were still continuing. Chen walked toward the source of the sound. It was coming from the farthest corner of the basement. As he approached, he saw an old door on the wall. The metal door was rusty but seemed sturdy. The hammering sounds seemed to be coming from behind the door. Ignoring all safety protocols, Chen decided to open the door. The door was an old-style military storage door. It was heavy, made of metal, and required many keys to open. But Chen tried the keys, and one of them fit the door. The door opened. Behind it was a narrow corridor. The corridor led down toward the building's foundations, and the hammering sounds were coming from the depths of the corridor. Chen turned on his flashlight and entered the corridor. The corridor was much longer than Chen had expected. The walls were made of concrete from the 1940s. Old electrical wires hung down from the ceiling. Chen saw some writings on the walls. December 7th, 1941. Never forget. USS Arizona. 1,177 souls. They are still waiting. The most terrifying inscription read, "Basement morgue. Temporary only. Bodies removed 1941. But underneath, in different handwriting, not all removed. Chen began to understand what the inscriptions meant. At the end of the corridor was a large room. When Chen entered the room, he saw that it was a military morgue from 1941. Old metal tables, steel cabinets, and some personal belongings. On the tables lay the soldiers' personal belongings, unwritten letters, family photos, enemy IDs, and wedding rings. And in the middle of the room was an old book. Personal effects log, Pearl Harbor casualties. When Chen opened the book, he saw pages filled with names. Johnson, Robert, age 19, letter to mother, undelivered. Williams Michael, age 18, engagement, ring, fiancé unknown. Martinez Carlos, age 20, family photo, address lost. After these soldiers died, their personal belongings were stored here, but they were never delivered to their families. As Chen read the book, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. His breath began to steam, and at that moment, he realized he wasn't alone in the room. Shadows were moving in the corners. First one shadow, then a second, a third. 10 shadows, 20 shadows, 30 shadows. They were all silhouettes of young soldiers between the ages of 18 and 20, and they were wearing uniforms. The young soldier at the front, holding a letter in his hand, approached Chen. "Please," he said in a very weak voice, "help us. Let's go home." Chen was frozen with fear, but in the soldier's eyes, He saw not a threat, but a plea. Chen gathered his courage and replied, "Your personal belongings are here, and none of them could be delivered to your families." The soldiers' shadows looked at the items on the tables. "We can't leave," said another voice. "We can't leave without saying goodbye." Chen understood. These soldiers had been here for 82 years because they had never been able to say their final goodbyes to their families. "The letters were never sent," said a third voice. "Our families never knew what happened to us." Chen saw the unwritten letters on the table. Unfinished words. "Dear Mother, I'm in Hawaii. I'm fine. Dear Sarah, when I return home. Father, the Navy." None of them were completed. Can Chen end this 82-year wait? The most shocking event occurred at that moment. Drum beats began to echo from the distance. Boom, boom, boom. Rhythmic, powerful drum beats. Chen recognized these sounds. From Hawaiian legends, the people making these sounds were the Night Walkers. The spirits of ancient Hawaiian warriors were walking on the island. The shadows of the soldiers began to move when they heard the drum beats. "They're coming," said the leader of the soldiers. "The ancients, they're protecting this land. But we don't belong here," said another voice. We're from the mainland." Chen realized the terrifying truth. The Night Walkers saw the soldiers who died at Pearl Harbor as foreigners and did not accept them in the spiritual world. As the drum beats grew closer, the building began to shake. The Night Walkers were Hawaii's native guardians. The Pearl Harbor soldiers, however, were considered invaders. Chen found himself trapped between two different spiritual forces in the room. From the corridor exit, red lights appeared. The Night Walkers were coming. The soldiers' shadows recoiled in fear. "Hide," whispered the leader of the soldiers. "When the Night Walkers come, the living must hide." Chen remembered the Hawaiian legend. Those who saw the Night Walkers must either greet them or die. The Night Walkers entered the room, fully armed in traditional Hawaiian island attire, spears, shields, feathered helmets. Their leader looked at Chen. His eyes were like fire. "Hello," he said in the Hawaiian language. "Stranger, why are you on our sacred land?" Chen was too afraid to speak. The leader of the Night Walkers turned to the Pearl Harbor soldiers. "You are also strangers. This land is not yours." The leader of the soldiers replied bravely, "We died while protecting America. This is our duty. Your duty brought death to our island." Chen could feel the tension between the two groups. A battle could break out. Chen stepped forward bravely. "Stop. Both sides are protecting this island." The leader of the Night Walkers turned to Chen. "You cannot speak." "I can speak," said Chen, "because I am also on duty here. I can help these soldiers reach their families." The soldiers and Night Walkers stopped. Chen picked up the letters on the table. "These young people are stranded here because they couldn't write letters home. If I deliver them to their families, they can find peace." "Will you leave our island?" asked the leader of the Night Walkers. "Yes, I will leave your island." After a long silence, the leader of the Night Walkers spoke. "Help them leave, and we will let you live." Chen nodded. "It's a deal." The leader of the soldiers approached Chen. "Are you really going to help us?" he asked. "Yes, I will finish these letters. I will deliver them to your families. You will find peace." The soldiers' shadows smiled for the first time. The night walkers retreated, beating their drums. Chen gathered the soldiers' personal belongings and left the basement. When the morning shift arrived, Chen acted as if he had had a normal night. "How was the night?" asked the shift supervisor. "Good," said Chen. "It was very good." But in Chen's bag were 82-year-old letters, photographs, and the soldiers' personal belongings. Chen began searching for the soldiers' families using some websites on the internet. Johnson Robert, age 19, from Michigan. Mother, Mary Johnson. Williams Michael, age 18, from Texas. Fiancée, Dorothy Smith. Martinez Carlos, age 20, from California. Mother, Rosa Martinez. Most of their families had died, but their grandchildren and great-grandchildren were still alive. Chen made his first contact with Robert Johnson's granddaughter. "Mrs. Patricia Johnson, this is Sergeant Chen calling from Pearl Harbor." "Pearl Harbor? My grandfather Robert died there." "I know, and I found his personal belongings after 82 years and want to return them to you." There was a long silence on the phone. The motion alarms no longer sounded. The cold spots disappeared. The footsteps ceased. Chen checked the basement one last time. The room with the personal belongings was empty. Only a note remained on the wall. "Thank you. We're home now. The children of Pearl Harbor." Chen completed his duty in Hawaii and was transferred to the mainland. But before leaving, he visited the Pearl Harbor Memorial. At the USS Arizona Memorial, the names of 1,177 soldiers were inscribed. Chen saw the names of the young men he had befriended among them: Johnson, Robert Williams, Michael Martinez, Carlos. "Rest in peace, friends," Chen said. What Chen achieved inspired similar projects at other military bases in Hawaii. World War I veterans at Schofield Barracks, Korean War casualties at Kaneohe Bay, Vietnam-era personnel at Bellows Field. All of their personal belongings were found and returned to their families. Military paranormal activities in Hawaii decreased by 80%. The most significant development was the establishment of peace between the Nightwalkers and modern military personnel. Thanks to Chen's peace agreement, the indigenous Hawaiian culture and military life are now coexisting in harmony. Military personnel now show respect for Hawaii's sacred sites. The Nightwalkers no longer attack their guests. Is this peace permanent? Or will there be new conflicts in the future? Chen is now stationed in Virginia, but his experience in Hawaii has changed him. Sometimes, Chen says, military duty isn't just about defending the present. It's about healing the past. Chen's story has drawn attention at the Pentagon. A historical reconciliation program is now being launched. Its aim: to address unresolved traumas at military bases. This story is written in memory of the 2,400 soldiers who truly died at Pearl Harbor. Do you think the traumas of the past can really cause paranormal activity? And does military personnel have a responsibility to address historical traumas? Most importantly, is modern military service only about the future, or does it also owe a debt to the past? Final note: cultural sensitivity. This story was written with respect for both Pearl Harbor veterans and native Hawaiian culture. The legend of the Nightwalkers is a sacred part of Hawaiian culture and has been approached with respect. Hawaii is not just a paradise island. It is sacred ground, drenched in the blood of thousands of soldiers and protected by ancient spirits. And sometimes, bridging the gap between the modern world and history is the greatest military duty.